Hey there, Gratitudeology podcast listeners. Jamie here. Many of you know me as the host of this podcast. Some of you know me as the face behind NYC Fit Fam on Instagram. And lots of you know me as the coach behind Brand Ninja, the course that teaches people how to secure 5 to 6 figures a month getting paid to work with brands you already use and love. On Friday, May 31st, I'm holding a special Brand Ninja Live Masterclass that you can join from the comfort of your home. If you've ever thought about making money working with brands you love as a content creator, or simply doing it as a side hustle to fund your personal and professional dreams, this event is for you. And the best part? It's only $47, but we only have limited spots at that price. But for the Gratitudeology podcast listeners, I've got you covered. Text the word LIVE to 55444 for the special sign-up link texted directly to your phone.
Yeah, well, we'd sure like to have everybody come to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho and see just what we have to offer.
Coeur d'Alene is probably among the most beautiful places you've never heard of. Tucked away in the northwest corner of Idaho, it has world-class spas, ski resorts, and golf courses surrounded by miles of pine trees and gorgeous lakes. For years, it was the best-kept secret among celebrities. Some big names who are said to have homes there are people like, George Clooney, John Elway, and Matthew McConaughey. And when the Kardashians visited, their hashtag Lake Life vacation pics were splashed all over social media. Soon after, Kim reportedly bought a $5 million mansion, while other family members also began buying properties. But long before any of that, Idaho has been called the Gem State for being a rich source of precious and semi-precious stones, including the rarest museum-quality garnets, opals, and jades. Of course, it often takes extreme heat and pressure to form the finest gems, and that's exactly what happened to one of Coeur d'Alene's leading residents, a different kind of rock, Erik Rock, whose dreams were shattered in an instant, plunging him into a bottomless pit of addiction and self-doubt. But he found redemption by channeling determination at the gym and purpose in entrepreneurship. Follow us on the long road and many years of Erik Rock's journey, from growing up in Nevada to making it in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. From a raw stone of great potential to a sparkling gem of a human being. Today on the Gratitudeology podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
Erik Rock is a fast-rising star in the personal and professional coaching circuit, a self-made entrepreneur, real estate mogul, and a philanthropist who I first met backstage at an Aspire conference. Aspire, of course, being one of the hottest touring entrepreneurial summits in the country. There was the usual rush of people mingling, and frankly, it isn't the ideal place to meet anyone. Still, I wanted to say hello to this man who just handed over a $100,000 check to charity. Usually, you're lucky to get an impersonal, nice to meet you, handshake, but Erik was instantly friendly and open. His warm smile lit up our conversation, even in the dimly lit green room. I felt immediate friendship. And as I boarded my flight home, the thought struck me, he should be my next guest on the podcast. And that is how we found ourselves, just about 3 months later, seated on the pink couches in the private recording studio at the W Hotel in Hollywood, getting ready for his interview. And while many people just ask Erik for business tips and profit protocols, I want to hear his whole story. Because I know it's a doozy. Erik Rock, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So I want to go back to the beginning. I understand you had a gift and a passion for baseball. Tell me about Little League Erik.
Yeah, Little League Erik. Well, as a kid, I was a fighter. I was dying to be seen as a child. I never met my biological father. And so at 7 years old, when my mom married my stepdad, who really filled that role as a male figure, it was very important for me. I just stepped into that role of fighting for someone's affection, and I wanted to be loved. He had a son that was a year older than me, my stepbrother. But I felt like most of my life, looking back, I was like Cinderella in my own family. All these years later, I'm actually really grateful for it. And it's all come full circle, and it was actually a blessing because Cinderella, all the animals spoke to Cinderella. She was really beautiful. She married the prince. She ended up in the castle. But it was that sort of that resource as a kid that I wouldn't fully understand what to do with it. It was the fire I kept tapping into to keep me fighting harder than the next guy.
Tell me a little bit about transcending roadblocks from like your baseball, and go easy on me, I'm squeamish. Okay, guys, I knew enough to brace myself because I know Erik's story and what was coming next. So let this serve as a little trigger warning for you. What's coming next is not easy to hear. Okay, so back to our pink couch at the W. Because I know that you had, obviously, your sights set on a baseball scholarship, life in the MLB, and then what happened?
I wasn't that talented. Honestly, I don't think I was. I was a small kid. And so at a young age, Jim became this invaluable best friend of mine, this resource of mine. I had this hero that came in my life. His name's Erik Rock. He's my cousin from South Bend, Indiana. He taught me how to work out. This was probably my greatest asset in the world, was being able to work out daily. But when I would be in the gym all those years, it was thinking about how to beat up my stepbrother, how to win a fight, because he was always bigger than me, he was more talented, he always had access to things that I just didn't. He had a wealthy family, and our situation at home was so different. So that gym was this place where I started grinding and fighting, and sports became the thing that I thought, well, maybe this is my way that I could win. Maybe this will be the way that I could be seen one day. Maybe this is the way that I could beat him. And as I got older and got stronger, I started getting around a lot of good athletes in high school, and I kind of became part of that culture. And it was clear, yeah, my one way out was gonna say fuck you to everybody, everyone through baseball. That was gonna be the thing that got me the D1 scholarship. I was gonna be a Major League Baseball player. I could work my way there. In my junior year is when finally I felt like it was all starting to come together. I think it was only me that really saw it too. I don't think anyone really took that seriously, but everything was starting to flow. I was starting to drop bombs. Like in the world of baseball, I was finally maturing into my body. All that aggression, all that strength that I worked for was starting to finally come around.
A scholarship, a career as a professional ball player, making it to the major leagues, they all seemed within reach.
And I was just in the groove, and that's when I played second base, covering first on a bunt, and my elbow just snapped. And that would set the tone for a lost identity, years of hell. The whole thing just kind of imploded right in front of me when I broke my elbow.
It took 4 doctors to reposition his elbow, but that resulted in substantial nerve damage that resulted in Erik losing sensation in his arm that took nearly 3 years to return. It was an agonizing time, and doctors doubted he could regain full extension of his wrist.
And the pain was so bad, it would just go through my whole body, up to the back of my brain, down to my lower back, and they prescribed me Oxy as the way out. And back then, Oxy was no big deal. They gave me away like candy.
OxyContin was a massively popular painkiller in the 1990s, but recently unsealed official documents have revealed that it was originally meant to alleviate pain only in cancer patients, and that its first round of clinical trials had produced adverse effects. Nevertheless, to boost sales, it was heavily marketed to be prescribed for any form of chronic pain. Of course, no mention was made of how addictive it could be.
And I became very addicted. I hid it from my family. No one knew how bad it really was, but I felt great. Like, I just didn't know my soul was slowly leaving my body.
But Erik was determined. He worked tirelessly and gradually regained the use of his left arm. Even though he had to miss his entire junior year in sports, he fought hard to return during his senior year, desperate for one last shot.
So I finally worked my way back to the baseball field. My senior year, I was back in the gym, still popping pills, but I was there. And my very first swing in the batting practice, my senior year, I tore my labrum and rotator cuff end to end. My baseball career and my identity, all my self-worth, all the fuck yous that I was meant to tell the world, that was gonna show the world I was a winner, just died with that kid right there.
Whether we are aware of it or not, there are aspects of our lives that define how we see ourselves. Our careers, our skills, our talents, our roles as parent, child, sibling, partner, even our looks. These often become the building blocks of who we think we are. But when all that's taken away, all that's left is confusion and emptiness, with no way to connect to reality. And for Erik, it was an overwhelming abyss of loss.
That is wild. And so really your way of getting love, of validation, all of it just evaporated.
It all just died right there, and it just, my soul was gone. I'll never forget, I had this one moment, I don't even know really where it was or how it went, but I'll never forget, I looked in the mirror and I realized how bad I looked. I did not look the same. I looked like an old man that was dying, and I was a kid still. I just didn't look good. I don't know when that was, but I remember thinking, like, I don't even recognize my own soul right now. This is fucked. This is not good. It was this moment of clarity about how bad it actually was. And the racket that I've been running, I've been telling a lie to so many people, but it was hard. I had no idea what my life was supposed to be about now. And it's hard to have these deep emotions like that when you're just a kid still.
It goes from bad to kind of worse, right?
College was terrible for me. I barely remember it. I ended up failing out of it at University of Nevada, Reno. I still had these like bizarre, grandiose like dreams of somehow getting healthy again and walking on the baseball field and just walking on the team. But I started partying a lot. I got into a fraternity, which was all a bunch of Vegas kids. There was the Vegas fraternity. And they exposed me, even my college roommate at the time, I mean, he had a really wealthy dad from Las Vegas. They started exposing me to the world of nightlife, clubbing, and I just became something that I should have never been. I tried to be someone I'm not, but at the core of it all was just this weak, poor kid who just had no identity at all. I really did some terrible things. I stole medicine from my grandpa, which just was a crippler for my own soul. Like, the whole thing got exposed. I got in really bad trouble in college. I never graduated. I dropped out. At some point before Jeanette, I got my life together, enough to get off drugs. Once I finally leveled up and I said, I have to stop, I did it all on my own, kind of cold turkey-ish. I worked myself out of it slowly but surely, and the gym was this resource that I slowly started leeching onto.
The gym became his salvation, feeding his soul, strengthening his body, and giving him renewed purpose. He started working the hotel casinos in Reno, from valet and car service to bell desk and eventually VIP host at Edge nightclub. His daily interactions with people from different walks of life gave him a deeper understanding of customer service and sharpened his sales skills.
I got into the nightclub business. I became a VIP host, so I had enough swagger even then, enough personality to be able to get a job that was a high demand job. 10,000 people would have wanted that job, and I was able to get it. And again, it wasn't necessarily the best years of my life, but at least I was latching on to some sort of identity that made me feel like I had some validity in the world, if you will.
And that was enough of a footing to meet Jeanette.
We didn't have a pot to piss in, really. I don't even know why she liked me. She was a aerialist, go-go dancer at night, and by day she was a vet tech. She was this really shy, quiet, she was about as wholesome as a girl as I've ever met, and I was about as unwholesome of a man as you've ever met. And those two worlds collided, and so I do feel like Jeanette had a lot to do with sort of making me more of a wholesome human. She could see right through all my BS. She called me out. It took me a long time to even get a date with her, but she really did ground me and sort of level me out. She found the real Erik Rock that was in there.
And somewhere, the fighter of Erik's youth was still in there. The one who still showed up at the gym and was now ready to be unleashed in business.
My dad called me with an opportunity, and at first I shrugged it off as something stupid, but it was a consignment store that had gone out of business in Reno, And he thought it was a great idea because you don't have to have any money tied up in inventory and consignment. And so he got into it first, and slowly I got pulled into the business with him.
Erik left the glitz and glam of Reno nightlife and got his feet wet in the consignment business with his dad at that store in Reno. And he was actually pretty good at it. In fact, he started to like it. So when another opportunity came his way,
business is like babies. You care about it so much, right? And I just kind of said yes to a rare opportunity.
This rare opportunity was a different consignment store in Idaho. Another chance to get in on the ground floor of something new. Was it a risk? Sure. Did it mean picking up and moving? Yeah, it sure did. But by now, a sense of determination had developed in Erik. So, in 2012, he and Jeanette packed up for Coeur d'Alene.
And jumped into the furniture world and left everything I knew and moved to Coeur d'Alene to start that business, yeah.
Starting a new life and the new business was a grind. In the early years, he and Jeanette and their 2 dogs lived in an office on the 2nd floor of the store, sleeping on an air mattress and working 7 days a week to make a go of it.
A lot of it's like you kind of are telling maybe a lie, and you have to convince yourself that it could be true. You have to convince people around you that it might be true. You have to convince your wife, in my case, that it was true. I pulled her away from her family to go take advantage of a unique opportunity, and I set a vision for what could be that I didn't really know if it was true or not. I had a vision of me being my own boss, my own man, and living out all my dreams and sort of reconnecting to something I could be passionate about. It didn't need to be furniture necessarily. I started really kind of believing it could have been hot dogs. But the gift of entrepreneurship is really more of this connection to a dream of turning nothing into something. And that's where I fell in love with business. If it fails, it's on you, you know, and there's a lot of pressure now. You have all these employees that are believing in you. And so when you start that process of starting a business, it does connect you to a lot of pressure. And that's where I realized I actually thrive really well under pressure. That's where I perform really well. That's where I pull rabbits out of the hat. That's where I'm really magical. But for many years, you may have these little victories that nobody sees, but they're big to you. You have to convince everyone else that this is true too. You have to get a whole army working for you.
But it wasn't overnight that Erik became the incredible boss and business leader he is today. No, that would take time and would deliver to him a whole new understanding of how an attitude of gratitude can fuel success.
And I remember for a whole year, Jeanette cried a lot. My wife, she wanted to go home. She hated it there. I drug her up there and I sold her on this vision that, like, I don't know how true it was. You know, we're going to build a dream home and, like, we're going to do all the fun things and, like, you're not going to have to work. The truth is, it wasn't like that for a long time. It was a lot of hell, and every customer to me became so valuable. Like if a customer walked in, I'd be so grateful they were just in our store because they didn't just come in like you think they would. Money doesn't just show up when you open a business. You obsess over it, you dream about it, and at the end of a day, when the store is closed, I would just sit there in the dark in the furniture store, just sitting there, like thinking, how am I gonna make this work? Like, how am I gonna get customers to spend money here? They just didn't show up like you think. It takes so much time and energy, and we were just in the fire. And in that pressure is where you start realizing how creative you can be as a human. Like how resourceful can you be with no information really. I just didn't have enough smarts at that time to like go read books. It was just me, a brick and mortar store, a traffic that flowed outside of it because we were off a freeway, and every once in a while a customer walked through the door. It was literally that crude when it started. I remember thinking of so many bumps in the road to try to consider, and if you're not a great leader, this whole thing melts quickly because so much of it might be hinging on literally like 2 key people quick, and that's what's hard is like you can't expect people to be like you. And that was what I learned early on is like they need a leader, and that's all I knew. Like I didn't know any about finance, about accounting. I didn't know, are we gonna close the doors today? Are we gonna go bankrupt today? Is this the day when like we close this thing down or when this whole thing implodes? You know, praying for sales to come in today so that you can pay for last month's decisions is such a precarious situation to live in, and it felt like we did that for years.
Yeah.
You know, the pressure of it all is a lot.
When you're in the adversity and you're in the tough times, how do you keep that flame lit? Because like I'm always telling people the ninja level lesson is to learn to embrace the suck. Yeah. But it's really hard because when you're in it, you're like, yeah, but for how long? Yeah. Like what if this is forever? How did you trust that it wasn't forever, it was just a season?
Yeah, that's a great question, number one. Well, I think there's different personalities and different temperaments, and I definitely don't think everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. I think this replaced that. And the obsession really of a child of trying to win in sports to be my F you out became the same sort of thing that I tapped into. Now, I don't know what people all tap into, but when I get around some of the best in class, a lot of them, I have a bunch of mentors now, and they all talk about it. They have different ways to phrase it. Tim Grover calls it the darkness. I was just with Ben Newman last night on a jet, actually. We talked about this same conversation. He calls it the burn. You tap into this dark place that keeps you fighting when most people would quit. And that's a lot of what those early years of business are. It'll be so easy to fold up shop and go back home to do what we know works. As a VIP host, I'd come with $1,000 a night in my pocket, easy money. I get a big commission check every month from all the bottles I sold. It was so easy to think I could go back to that. And in fact, for a while, I had this instinct to try to keep one foot in this and then also be an entrepreneur. And at some point I realized you have to go all in. You have to be willing to die for this because I'm obsessive. I literally don't do anything else except ponder how to win at what I'm focused on. So those early resources that I tapped into was pretty crude. It wasn't so much more than anything except I had a deep desire to win. And that desire is what fueled me. It's what created creativity. But I'll be honest, some of the greatest things I would teach now, knowing what I know now, is this concept of really leaning into like endorphins as an example.
To Erik, those daily workouts provided the metaphoric and chemical incentive flowing out from his body and fueling the drive for anything and everything he did.
Me being disciplined here, it showed up in my business here. I just needed a little window of courage that was from the spark of creativity that endorphins brought me. And I could show up every day to work, even if we had no money, if we had creditors calling, we had customers pissed off, whatever the pressure was here. I needed that little hit in the morning, that little discipline that would spark the creative Erik Rock, and I could believe the impossible. And I could go in on fire. And I just started being a leader. No matter how bad it is, you show up, and you show up on fire. Ready to serve, ready to inspire, ready to commit to any opportunity that comes around you. You can't come in like, poor me. You can't do that. I teach this now, how to become addicted to endorphins. Most people work out for the body and they're totally missing the most addictive quality of it. And what I'm trying to say is, no, I want courage, daily courage in the marketplace. I directly connect money to endorphins. And those two things go hand in hand. My greatest ideas in marketing, some of the biggest 10x moves in real estate I've ever made, some of the best investments I've made, some of the best relationships I've ever curated. Every one of them sparked from a courageous idea when I was in a flow state where endorphins were teeming, and I had the courage to make a phone call and go put it in the marketplace, to go make some bold action, to go rip something apart. And every time I went and broke something like a bull in a china cabinet, it's the best way to describe what endorphins did for me. It sparked something, some sort of action in the marketplace. No matter how stressed I've ever been in my life, the gym is there. So I was gifted with that as a kid, and that's the thing I leveraged the whole time in my life. It's the one thing I relied on. There's no difference in business. And so this is, it's a non-negotiable for me. It's like life or death. I'll do this every day, no matter what.
Erik took all that burning passion, those endorphin rushes from one kind of business into an entirely new level, real estate.
So now it goes from like the furniture store into like real estate, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I had a few obsessive thoughts early on. I had to change the perception of consignment. I had this one dominating thought is, how do I turn something ugly and make it sexy? Very simple and crude thought, right? How do I get into wealthy people's homes? Consignment brings so much of this type of business, which is great. It doesn't move the needle that much. It's not that fun. It's not that sexy. And so this thought right here sort of made me change how I think about marketing, how I think about communication. And a lot of that would actually start netting results. We would start getting into some really wealthy homes, famous people's homes. And they became my greatest resource to information. If the business can't run without you, it's not a real business.
That's so important for people to hear.
It was the idea of changing the perception of business that somehow started getting me close to some of the wealthiest people in the world. They would give me little advice just because they saw so much energy in me. And oftentimes I realize now that I have partnerships with some of the wealthiest people in the world, I've done so many crazy deals with just amazing humans. I realize now the thing they loved in me was this energy that I always had. and this vulnerability and authenticity that I would put out there, and they would want me to win. They didn't even like my furniture as much as they liked me. They just want me to win. It was this connection to really understanding what worked, and they would drop you these nuggets. And as long as you are a steward to their assets and listening to what they're saying, you'd realize like their net worth came from real estate. Their net worth came from pulling themselves out of the business. Their net worth came from growing a business from the outside, really, not being a slave on the inside. Because I could have just stayed in consignment. That thing now, just to be clear, has grown into the largest furniture and jewelry consignment store in the country, one of the most beautiful, unique business models in America. It's a business model today that I think has the potential to go coast to coast, and we fill up big box retail space just like the big boys do. No one would have ever thought consignment can do that. And it was that, in my mind, it was that connection to really getting the perception of what we do different that brought in the $20,000 sales, the $30,000 sales, the $50,000 sales. We do now things that are so different from where the original model started, but that means we're dealing with a whole new caliber of human. And that was the first thing I learned is you've got to exit the business. You cannot be stuck in there like a slave. You're never really gonna grow. So my mind started changing at some point, and I started looking around, how do I curate talent? I started rethinking what my role in the company actually was. Like, my job is to not be stuck in this thing. My job is to create winners. And that's at some point really where I started cultivating my perspective that I've turned into today.
And that's how Erik found new success in real estate. Not just buying and selling property, but in land development through his partnerships with Rock Properties and Rad Properties.
Real estate became sort of the place where my eyes became wide awake. And a lot of my time started looking around Coeur d'Alene, this beautiful market that really, in my mind, was a secret, had not been found out yet. Can we start putting resources, all this hard work, can go into land? And we did. We put some really great land deals together. It turned into some beautiful partnerships. We're now one of the largest commercial landowners in all of North Idaho, still acquiring property today. And the future now for me is primarily real estate.
So tell me a little bit about Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, Coeur d'Alene was cool. So I grew up in Reno, Lake Tahoe area. And one thing that I noticed when I was a kid is Silicon Valley, when that erupted and the big tech space really blew up, one of the first big beneficiaries of that was landowners in Lake Tahoe. All that primary lakefront and secondary lakefront started getting bought out by billionaires. So millionaires were getting kicked out by billionaires in Lake Tahoe. Property values soared through the roof, some of the most expensive lakefront in the world. And so I grew up around that, sort of in that era. Coeur d'Alene, when we first opened up business in Coeur d'Alene, which is a little town in North Idaho, and really a resort town, kind of like Jackson Hole or Aspen, that hadn't been found out yet. And you know it hasn't been found out because property values are basically dirt cheap. You could get a beautiful home on the lake. When you start living there, you realize there's legends that live up here quietly. A lot of celebrities were already up there, but it was still a secret. Ed Milet was up there. He just had a house that sold a few years ago for $28 million on the lake. And my only instinct, even as a dumb kid that knew nothing, was I just compared Lake Tahoe to Lake Coeur d'Alene. And I said, sooner or later this will happen here. This is probably a good place to raise a family. This is probably a good place to invest. This is probably a good place to curate a business. This is probably a good place to put my heart. And I had a lot of access and a lot of information that the average person didn't.
And of course, when these girls come a-knockin',
I'm allowed to do whatever I want. You guys are not good businesswomen. You don't know anything
things
about business.
are about to start rockin'.
And when the Kardashians start building like 3 homes side by side on the lake in a random little Idaho town, and they're doing Instagrams all the time, that's when you know you're screwed. Everything's so expensive now, and it is. It's now a very expensive market, but when I got there, it was literally dirt cheap.
But as if businesses weren't enough to preoccupy him, Erik found time to devote to something more meaningful, something that allowed him to give back to many charity organizations and through coaching. Erik shares not just his wealth, but his passion and determination, a spirit of encouragement and a spark of his fire that can help change someone else's life for the better. And ironically, it would also take him to new heights and give him an even greater purpose.
If you don't live a life of purpose, or if you don't have any real fulfillment, what's the point of life? Pain, I think about all the time as part of like my daily grateful exercises to make sure I'm never a victim. I get out of my own way. I don't complain too much. I'm on the board for Make-A-Wish as an example. So I get to constantly be near these stories of wishes that we're granting of kids that don't have anything. It is the greatest life hack to live a fulfilled life and to live a life with purpose and passion and all that. I met some of the most legendary humans on planet Earth through charity. I got a seat at the table, not because I was talented, smart, or succeeding so well in life, it's because I said yes to giving. That's not why I was giving, and that's not why you should either. If you give, it's gonna get you closer to your dreams faster, but it led me to so many great causes, so many great people. Make your business a giving business, and you'll win bigger. You'll win better, you'll win smarter, you'll win faster, you'll win happier. And now you really get to say that you're someone that is leaving a good mark in the world, instead of someone that just takes. What I've found is, of all the greatest men and women I've ever met, they're incredibly kind. But they do have demand around them, and there is an algorithm that circles them. I would see right past an algorithm that you may think is someone's arrogant, or I would just realize, oh, it's a high demand human. You gotta learn how to break through it before you can fully judge someone. They're very giving, you just have to know how to speak to them.
But also this kind of ties into, I want you to share with us what it is that you do today, because also you're coaching, you are paying this forward every single day, and you're man on a mission, you know, podcast and everything that you do. Tell us about that, and like, what are the primary principles that you're trying to teach people?
Yeah. When I met Ed Milet, and finally I got this unique position about being around someone that I admired. It might have been the first person ever that really saw something in me that I didn't even see myself. And he asked me a couple questions that left me dumbfounded and really embarrassed. He said, what's your mission? What's your brand? And like, I'm thinking furniture, and like, he goes, no, brother, no, what's your brand? And I just sat there like an idiot. And I realized I don't really have a lot that I'm offering the world. I'm not doing anything really profound in my life. Ed comes in and he challenges me to do this. He goes, brother, you have to. And I committed to coaching with him. I started working with him, and he made me in this one person that pulled me out, and he goes, no, you have to do it. So I just made this deep commitment. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna get in the light. I'm gonna try to impact the world. I'm gonna put big passion projects out as far as living in the light goes. And this is this next stage of my life. And now I get to realize everyone is like looking for the answer, but they're staying away from their fears constantly. Like really leaning into that and learning how to curate a life around that makes you insanely dangerous. Part of what I do now is I help people win as part of this passion project that is giving me a foundation to grow into the biggest stages in the world. I'm working myself there. I have a great mentor that has helped show me a foundation. And I'm working with people, and I'm really challenging myself as a leader to really help people at scale. The spearhead of your greatest self will be leaning into that story, not hiding from it. The greatest fulfillment a person will ever have is not having a bunch of money in the bank. The greatest fulfillment will really be leaning into this fear and building an entire life around service in the light. It is so much easier to feed your dreams when you have the courage to build a life. It's so much easier to be resourceful, to have energy everywhere you go, to have people want to give you things, to have demand all around you. We want to use that for good though, and that's where I think it is so important to be mission driven, because mission is why I do this. It's what gets me past my insecurities. Because without it, I'd be so afraid of what people think I wouldn't do it. So I lean into it so much. I'm such a religious person when it comes to mission that it's actually connecting me closer to God. And I do feel like if I died today, I kind of feel like I'm leaving it all on the table. I'm kind of okay with it. Whereas literally 2 years ago, I was so afraid of death. And now it's still there, but it's a very healthy relationship, and I realize we're all gonna die. And so these are some of the systems and processes that have pushed me into a very unique place where I'll be this rare human one day. And that is really important to be wide aware of, just for your own soul. You know what I mean? To just be really aware that you now have a unique power and unique responsibility. You better care about people. You better try to really help people. You better help them move the needle in their life. Because if you really don't care, and this is all for the wrong reasons, like you're missing the whole point.
I did say I was going to ask you about just what you do on a daily basis, and I think people would be intrigued, because if anybody's been on your Instagram, Erik Rock LOL, then they've seen that you show the abs, you show the physique, but you show it to inspire. Just tell us what you do daily to kind of stay in the gratitude, because that's where I like to always end. Well,
I'll just start with the fitness piece. Again, like if you're not, whatever you do, if you're not showing up feeling amazing every day, not teeming with energy, I don't even see the point of getting rich, by the way, if you don't have your health in order. So some people I work with, okay, and they tell you all these big dreams and they want to focus on money. They think that financial freedom or that next level of business is what they want. And when you get a look beneath the hood, you realize their house isn't in order. It's in complete disarray. Yeah. And it's so hard for me to start here when you should be focusing on here. Your house is a mess. first place to notice that is with someone's discipline that shows through their body, it shows through their skin, it shows through the energy that's pouring out of them. Biohacking, nutrition really became invaluable for me to try to master alongside the discipline of just the gym. And so what I found at 40 years old is, I think for me, this is for me what's worked for me. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I've obsessively gone down so many diet roads. I was vegan for years, the keto thing. Like, I've tried every diet, every kind of hormone, always trying to play optimized in gray zones, peptides, you name it. This formula for me that I've stumbled on, what I think is the most sustainable thing I've ever found. It's the most least stressful thing I've ever found. And it connects to the discipline of the daily gym geniusly. And I'm able to retain more muscle with less inflammation and great body composition in a way where it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. I can take my shirt off now and trust that it just will look good. The amount of vulnerability and cringiness I have of taking my shirt off and putting it on Instagram, it's painful. I always think, what's my mom thinking? Like, oh God, I'm so worried about what everyone thinks. Like, I still have that, but I believe so much in my mission, I have to connect to that I'm impacting people, that young guys are looking at me, and somehow that the butterfly effect of you leveling up and you leveling up and you leveling up is a direct connection to the children that need great leadership. All these things are important in my why, or I would never take my shirt off. I just don't eat that much. And I would have never imagined that fasting, years of bodybuilding, 6 meals a day, diet, food, and I'd always be stressed. I'd be working, oh, it's 12, I need to get a meal in, protein, I gotta keep the metabolism working all day. I look at pictures when I was jacked and I was eating 6 meals a day, and right now, I literally look twice as big as that with my shirt off. My face looks way tighter, and I eat 1 meal a day. So I'm down to 1 meal a day, and my system is pretty simple. It's not perfect every day, but that's the core of me. And I break it with a vegan fermented protein shake. I like vegan because I don't feel bloated. It makes it really easy to drink it and still feel like I'm in a flow state. And now I can enjoy dinner. It's no longer stressful to eat. It's kind of fun. We work so hard, us gym rats, that I feel like I had to eat. In America especially, we have trained us that every time we have an itch, we need to feed ourselves. Fasting is such a gateway to great body composition, to no inflammation, and to a ton of energy and crazy flow state, a lot of clarity. This is like the best version of me, and I never worry about food. What I think that makes it a hack for me is the protein shakes. It's just a simple connection to making sure that all the muscle tissue I tear, I'm still getting protein synthesis through that process, just enough with the 1 meal to keep that feeding window tight and make sure I'm feeding myself enough protein. And then once a month, I'll do a 3-day fast.
That's amazing. That's really an incredible amount of discipline, but it's clearly working. You're clearly in your peak state. We can all see it from the outside, and I think you can hear it. I can hear it in your voice. You have a sense of conviction, and it comes from a deep-rooted sense of knowing who you are, knowing you're in the right place. Bringing us to the last question, which is, what do you do to stay in gratitude for all that you have?
I think I do it all throughout the day. What's great for me is I have like such bad amnesia to bad things that happen. Every single day I have pressure, I have stress, I'm overwhelmed, I take on way too much, I say yes to too many things. And I think that for me, I've really gamified this. The second I feel like blood pressure in my throat, it feels like a heartbeat right here, and it's pressure. And it's usually because like too much has hit me right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to delegate and move things away from me. That pressure can literally send me going downhill if I don't have a system and a process to handle it. So number one is recognizing a feeling I don't like that's gonna make me embarrass myself in front of my wife, that's gonna make me look like an asshole, whatever is gonna make me rude. Doesn't mean I'm perfect at this, but I always recognize it very quickly now. I'll give you one example. If I'm on the freeway and someone's going past me and they cut me off and then they reach out the window and flip me off, the alpha inside me will want to rip that motherfucker out of the car, and I will want to gas pedal down. Like, you know, I'll be honest, like the old alpha Eric, if I have a gun, and I think there's a lot of grown men out there that may understand this instinct, and someone just almost kills you on a freeway, like just that urge to want to say, you motherfucker, but no, I could kill a little child, I could hurt, I'm at least gonna embarrass myself in front of my wife, that's gonna scare her, I could hurt someone innocent. Of course, most people won't do that. But you gotta be honest to the instinct. The feeling you feel feels like you wanna do that. Even if you don't think it, you feel it when someone does that to you. To be able to gamify that feeling into an instant reaction that you trust is super important. I love talking about gamifying things that don't serve you. This does not serve you to react emotionally. And if you can remain calm in the storm, which is a virtue, this is a game changer. And so for me, I always recognize that blood pressure feeling where I want to rip someone's head off. The second I do it, I can go into an instant state of deep breath where I just pull it together through breath. And right in that moment, for one, I think about a chessboard. I realize I'm still in control. I still have the power. It's a great gamified system that I put into place, but I always remember some piece of gratefulness of like someone that's really suffering, like I'm not suffering right now. There's children with cancer. I always connect to this deep thought. You'll hear me talk about this like maybe 10 times a day. And anyone that really knows me or spends a lot of time, or my assistant, she hears all my deepest thoughts. You'll always hear me talk about what real pain actually looks like, and it helps me pull myself out of my own way. Again, it doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I can pull myself out of the own way. And for me, every single day, no matter how bad day yesterday was, it starts with endorphins, it starts with gratitude. Those two things to me, they team together. And you ask my wife how annoying I am in the morning. I come buzzing in like, I'm gonna burn this motherfucker down. Life is short, we're gonna get it today, baby. Yeah. And it is the seed of gratitude that flows through me. And it's very hard to be grateful and be a victim in the same breath. You can't actually. It's not possible to be a victim and to be grateful. You have to pick one or the other. So if you always ride on this, and particularly when you have a feeling you don't like, you're always gonna win the day.
As we just learned from Erik, even losing everything doesn't have to be the end of the story. In the darkest pit, in the harshest of circumstances, a piece of rock can transform into something extraordinary, something beautiful, a sparkling gem. But somehow, some way, one has to find a source of inner strength to endure. For Erik, working out focused his drive and determination to guide him out of the darkness of addiction, the loss of his dreams, to begin again. And in his journey, Erik was able to create a successful and more meaningful path, and surely an inspiration to anyone facing adversity and reminding us all that greatness can come out of being put through the fire. Erik Rock, thank you so much for joining and sharing your message with us today. If you want to follow Erik from home, you can check him out over on Instagram. He is at Erik Rock, LOL. And of course, tune in to his podcast, Man on a Mission. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right